Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, episode 19, Starcrash. Thank you for joining us tonight, folks. I'm really happy to have everybody here. And with me tonight is my guest host, is a very old friend of mine, and I have actually not spoken to him in almost 35 years. So this is a wonderful way for us to kind of reunite and to get back into the whole sci-fi adventures. And he's my good friend from the past, Mr. Ross AMICO. Ross, welcome.
Thanks very much, Roy. Your old friend who's getting older. This is the world broadcast premiere of my Corona beard, by the way. No razor has touched this face since about St. Patrick's Day.
Oh my goodness.
I hope everyone's well on your end. Yeah.
Ross, it is so awesome to have you on. This is great. You know, this is going to be like a nostalgic show. I mean, we're talking about Starcrash tonight, but before we start talking about it, the fact that we're able to reunite with everything that's going on in the world, with everything, and just to be brought together. But actually, the way we're being brought together is to talk about a sci-fi movie that is from like our generation, you know, when we were growing up. And it's just no better way to reconnect. So I really want to thank you for being on, and I'm just really excited about this. I've been really looking forward to this.
Well, thanks for having me, Roy. Of course, Joe gets Star Wars, but you know, I get Starcrash. So, but this was one of my recommendations. So I mean,
it was. In fact, you know, before we even start talking about the show, there's so much stuff going on in the world right now. I mean, especially within, you know, on a global pandemic, but then we also have stuff that's going on within the country. So I'm just really happy that we can actually take the time to bring, you know, friends, fans of science fiction together and just kind of like, you know, just have fun discussing and reminiscing about shows and movies that, you know, we've, you know, loved from the past. And no what better way than to do a movie like Starcrash, which is from 1978-79 when it premiered, and is just essentially it's just a really fun movie. I just think that it's going to be a really kind of cool hour just to kind of like talk about it and see what the fans out there think. And as people start coming in, I'm going to start welcoming them to the show as well. But thank you, you know, again.
Well, I'm here. I'm at your disposal, ready to talk Starcrash.
Hey, before we start, I just want to say hi to John and Sue. Thanks for joining us. I'm seeing you out there, John Haig. Thanks for joining, and Vince, thanks for being out there. And we are broadcasting on the new website, and it's the show's page. I used to broadcast on my personal Facebook page, and it was remembering science fiction television shows of the 1960s and 70s. But I thought it would be better to broadcast at least on a more centralized point, and then also just try to open it up. I mean, 60s and 70s sci-fi is the core of what this show is all about. But we started dealing with, you know, movies as well as television. So what better way? And just here we go, folks. And I'm just going to put this up just so everybody can see this. I've been kind of experimenting with this, so everybody please bear with me, and I'm going to try to show you something on the screen. You know, advanced technology here, and this is live broadcasting, and as you know, a lot of times when we do live broadcasts on here, we tend to falter, so I embrace that. And with that said,
a leap of faith.
Here we go. I'm going to try to show you the screen, and this is the actual movie we are going to be talking about tonight.
There it is, in all its glory.
I'm just curious out there if our fans remember this movie.
Yeah, you got Carolyn Monroe in her space bikini. You've got Marjoe Gortner with his it's not a lightsaber, you know, it's a laser sword, you know, and then the robot L, and a ship there in the background. So that's right. Now this is an Italian movie that was made and released in 1978, as you said, 1979 maybe in the United States. But and obviously riding on the coattails, surfing on the coattails of Star Wars, trying to cash in, and it did. But also there's a lot of Barbarella in it. I mean, there are a lot of other influences in this movie. You know, it's an entertaining movie. It's never boring. Doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes, but it's never boring. And the cast is incredible. We'll get to that. I'm going to follow your lead, and we'll just.
No, you're off to a great start, and it's funny too, Russ. You know, you just mentioned Barbarella, and I believe that was a 1967-68 film which starred Jane Fonda, And yes, there was a lot of Stella Star, who is Carolyn Monroe. There was a lot of that in her character in this movie. In fact, I remember the first time I saw this film was probably about 39, 40 years ago. It was probably around 1979, 1980. Back in the day, and I was talking about this on Friday with Mary Beth, my parents used to have HBO in the area that I grew up in was really big, but my parents went with something called Prism, and a lot of things were like shown out of Philadelphia with that, the Spectrum and what have you. A lot of sports. There used to be like wrestling that would be on like once a month. You could see the the wrestling that was never fake. They would broadcast that. But anyway, on that channel, I actually had the opportunity to see Starcrash, and I remember watching it and always being into sci-fi. I thought, it was kind of interesting, and it was funny because even watching it just recently, rewatching it this week, this weekend, hearing those voices, and it just like it was like opening the floodgates, where these memories from like 40 years ago from this movie. And interesting enough, I was thinking that this movie's title was Stella Star because that was the character that Carolyn Monroe played. And as soon as I started watching it, it was like, okay, I remember this, and everything just started coming back to me.
Well, I think in foreign distribution, I think it was like The Adventures of Stella Star or something like that. And it was intended to be a series. They thought it might spawn a series of films. Unfortunately, they never made this official sequel. Supposedly Klaus Kinski was going to be in the sequel. Now, it's a crime against cinema, I think, that they didn't make that. But there was a film called Starcrash 2, but it had nothing to do. The Italians have this incredible flair for ripping everything off with their movies. They have this assembly line films, and this goes all the way back, with the Machiste films, the Hercules films, one is successful, and then they just churn out hundreds of movies, and they just they keep putting. In Italy, they're all called Machiste, but we don't know what Machiste is here in the United States. He was a strongman from the silent era. There was a film called Cabiria, and it featured a strongman, and his name was Machiste. So whenever they make these things in Italy, instead of Hercules or Samson or Goliath or Atlas or whatever strongman you choose, it's always Machiste. Just like with the spaghetti westerns with Django. When the original Django was a big hit with Franco Nero, suddenly all of them were called Django, even though Django wasn't, they just put it on the poster to get people in there. So Starcrash was kind of like that. It jumped on the space bandwagon. So there was a Starcrash 2, which had nothing to do with Starcrash.
And interesting, like you were saying, it was right after Star Wars. And of course, with Star Wars coming out, it seems like every production company, whether it be international or within the US, wanted to jump on that bandwagon to try to capture the essence of science fiction and as far as what they felt. And I had read about this director. Now, the director of this movie, Luigi COZZI, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's interesting because, as you pointed out, there are two versions to this. There is the European version, and then there's also the US version. And the US version, I believe, was purchased by Roger Corman, and he essentially bought the film and then tried to make it a little bit more serious by deleting about maybe 5 minutes of dialogue and scenes that he felt that were silly and were not appropriate, in order to try to market it to the US audiences, to make it that much more appealing in that sense, which whether or not that was successful, I think we all know.
Roger Corman, Mr. Maturity, it really helped too, cutting out the 5 minutes or whatever he clipped out of there. Yeah.
I would really be interested in watching the European version. And unfortunately, one of my, the one thing was that Carolyn Monroe's voice was dubbed. She was dubbed over as a result of that.
Well, they were all dubbed because that was another thing about Italian cinema. It was produced by Cinecittà Studios in Italy, and going all the way back, that's where Fellini did his movies. But going all the way back, what they would do, even the Italian actors, they would redub their voices because the equipment and the sound stage and the noise bleeding in from outside was always so loud, it just destroyed the soundtrack, the illusion. So they would all come back and dub. So that's what happened with, exactly. Everybody's voices are dubbed in Starcrash. and yeah, Carolyn Monroe and her husband, who plays L, the robot, Judd Hamilton. They were both dubbed by other people. The person who dubbed Carolyn Monroe's voice was Candy Clark.
Marjo Gortner's wife, right?
Yes, yes. So this is another one of your all roads go back kind of thing, because I know you like to do that, because Candy Clark was in American Graffiti, which was directed by George Lucas. So it doesn't quite go to Star Trek, but there's a connection to Star Wars, or to it's like a couple generations removed from Star Wars there somehow.
Hey, Ross, I just want to give
Lucas, who made Star Wars.
I just want to give a quick couple shout outs. Rob, hey Rob, thanks for joining us. He's saying with Marjo Gortner is the worst Jedi ever, and Joe Spinelli is the princess. Oh my God.
Joe Spinelli, yeah. Don't mess
Diane's
with him.
joining us in. Hey Diane, thanks for joining us. Good to see you out there. And also Martin's out there too. Thanks Martin for joining us. I appreciate it. Yeah, the worst Jedi ever. I guess that could be summed up, although it wasn't a lightsaber, right, Ross?
Yeah, Marjo Gortner. Yeah, so where do we start with this cast? What do we say about this? It's an incredible cast.
It really is.
And you wonder how they got these people together. But
so you know what? I'm going to actually bring up some scenes, and we'll actually take a look at these. So all right. I'm just going to do that. Give me one moment here while we take a look at some of the people that were involved in this interesting production. And here we go. I mean,
there we go.
On the far right, we've got Carolyn Monroe, who was interestingly dressed throughout the film. Although I did read in researching that for the second half of the film, they made sure that she was a little bit more conservative, I guess, because they were worried that if this actually did go to the US and as far as actually went on to television at some point, they wanted to make sure it wasn't censored. So that's why she wasn't wearing a bikini throughout the entire film.
That's what they say, but you know what? Watching the movie, she's in a bikini for 5/6 of the movie. It's what kind of fraction is that? But yeah, here, if you look closely, they just basically put some saran wrap over the bikini, so it's it's still there. But interestingly, Carolyn Monroe, we know her from she was in Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which was one of the real Sinbads, the Ray Harryhausen things. She was in Spy Who Loved Me.
Yes.
The James Bond. She's Bond girl. In fact, she came right to this movie after The Spy Who Loved Me. And she made a number of Hammer films. But one of the things was she had a long-term contract with Hammer, but one of the things was she didn't want to do nudity. Right. Which is I get it, but it's funny because all she does is walk around in bathing suits and everything she's in, but and then they're worried about the thing getting censored on television because she's wearing a bathing suit. But Marjo Gortner in the center there with a lightsaber, or I'm sorry, laser sword. Yep. He got top billing in this movie. She got second billing.
That's right. That's right.
Now Marjo Gortner was the son of evangelists, the big evangelist couple that operated on the West Coast. And
interesting enough, I read that he actually was an evangelist as a 4-year-old. I guess he holds the record. Yeah,
he was a prodigy. Yeah, very, very well drilled by his parents, apparently, that he was, but he was very adept at whipping crowds into a fervor. And he performed a wedding apparently at the age of 4. I don't know how he was ordained at that age, but
crazy.
And of course, when you're thrown in like that, he rebelled. He had a period of rebellion, and he went and became a beatnik, and then he discovered acting. So, but in order to make money again, he came back and did his own stretch as an evangelist. His dad, I guess, they raised something like $4 million, and his dad ran off with it. I mean, from my memory, I don't want to get slander anybody, but I think this is what happened. So he came back and he did a farewell tour or something like that, and then they made a documentary about it called Marjo. And it won the Academy Award for Best Short in 1972. So this kind of gave him a lot of notice, and then he got into the movies. So you may remember him if you've seen Earthquake. He was in Earthquake. He played a grocer in that movie who gets called up in the National Guard and abuses his power. He's kind of the villain in the movie. But it's funny because I went back and watched a clip from Earthquake this week where they're Hare Krishna outside, and he's going crazy as the grocer. And George Kennedy has to be in all these things, of course. You know, he's in all the.
I remember George Kennedy being in all the earthquake movies and the airport movies back in the day in the 70s. Yeah.
So he plays a cop, and Marjoe Gortner says, "Aren't you going to do anything about this?" And George Kennedy goes, "What? You have something against religion?" So then I start looking at all these clips of Marjoe Gortner, and they always throw these quips in there about religion. And if you notice at the end of Starcrash, right when the still is taken with him with the lightsaber, or laser sword, right before that, he says something about, well, you have to have faith, you know. So I think that they throw these lines in there to kind of make fun of his past. Right. There's a little bit of a Mork from Ork look about him, doesn't he? And some of
he really does. That's true. There's a strange similarity between him and Robin Williams there.
Except maybe the afro.
Maybe. And then we've got David Hasselhoff.
It doesn't get any better than that, does it? Yeah.
I mean, this is like right before he started doing Knight Rider with Kid. I think that was in the early 80s when that premiered. But I mean, David Hasselhoff is playing the prince in this movie, Prince Simon.
Prince Simon of the eyeliner. He had a tremendous eyeliner in this movie. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I did. In fact, it looks like Marjoe Gortner did too, but I think more so. I think David Hasselhoff had about as much on as Carolyn Monroe, because it looked like they were trying to really, make his eyes stand out as well. It's interesting because, again, this was an Italian production, and it's interesting to see how they conceive their special effects, what they do with that as far as, and then even the sets, the set design, the dialogue, and just the overall feel of the movie. But yeah, those are essentially, well, even with David Hasselhoff's Prince Simon, we really don't get to see him until later on in the movie.
Oh yeah, he does nothing. Yeah, he has a short period with the a little stint with the light sword, the laser sword.
Right.
But otherwise, he's not. Well, I heard he got food poisoning. That's why.
Yes, and then that's why at the very beginning, well, when we finally do see him, when he is introduced, he has a mask on, and the reason being is because of the food poisoning. They actually had somebody standing in for him because he wasn't available.
Why? I didn't know that. Well, how about that mask? It's like that he's got like a gold creature from the Black Lagoon mask on. It reminds me of those. Remember those Aurora horror models used to get at Hobby Hangout?
Yes.
You get Dracula or Frankenstein or the Wolfman, and part of them would glow in the dark. It reminded me of the creature head from that model that he was wearing, or his stand-in was wearing in those scenes. So that's why. Okay, well, that's a clever solution. Very resourceful, those Italians.
Oh yeah, very. Hey, Mary Beth, I just want to say thanks for joining us. I'm seeing you out there. Thank you. Yes, and you were saying, Mary Beth had indicated too about Carolyn Monroe in regards to The Spy Who Loved Me. And I did not know that Carolyn Monroe may have been actually up for the lead as opposed to Barbara Bach. So that's interesting. I mean, she was in the film. She played the helicopter pilot who was essentially trying to kill both Barbara Bach's character and James Bond on the underwater. And actually, when the Lotus went into the dive, and then what he did was he torpedoed it, or actually sent a missile rather, and it blew up the helicopter that she was in.
Well, she's still active. I was looking up. Did you look at her filmography by any chance, Carolyn Monroe?
I did not, and I should have.
Well, I mean, just last year, she made a movie called House of Gorgon, or House of the Gorgon, and it looks like this Neo Hammer movie. She made it with the Bond girl that you're so fond of, Spy Who Loved Me. Who's it? Martine Breswick? Is that her name? She's in From Russia with Love. From Russia with Love,
yes. Sorry, that's Danielle.
Danielle. Maybe it wasn't.
I can't think of her last name, but I know who you're talking about, though.
Well, the two of them turn up in the Gorgon movie, and it looks like a very it looks totally like Hammer, except maybe done on video instead of film or something. But it looked interesting. It looked fun.
She actually does convention appearances, and she's been at the Chiller Theater, which is actually in New Jersey, and she's been there several times. Very, very nice, very approachable, really good with the fans. So she is very active, and and this is a movie that was actually made in the principal photography was done in 1977. So you're talking about like 43 years ago. And also, Ross, you had indicated too that she was in the 1973 film that she did. Was it Jason of the not Jason of the Argonauts, but
Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which was incredible.
Yeah, there is a Jason and the Argonauts reference in this movie, but I don't know. Are we jumping all over the place here, or did you have an outline, or how?
No, we're just going with the flow. more
all right,
fun that way.
let's just say I didn't see this movie in the theater. Like you, I caught it on cable. And you know what? I don't know if I ever saw it straight through. I saw the whole thing because it was on HBO constantly. You know, it was one of those things, you know, Dennis Miller used to make the joke about Beastmaster. The HBO was the Beastmaster channel. It would be like, hey, Beastmaster's on HBO. But it was like that. You caught part of Starcrash. You'd see the troglodytes, or you'd see the Amazons, or there's everything in this movie. In fact, it has everything except dinosaurs. And I was surprised to read there was actually a dinosaur sequence, but they cut it out. So.
They cut it out. I did see that. That would have been very, very interesting to have seen if how that actually would have turned up.
Yeah. And apparently, I don't have that DVD or a Blu-ray of it, but I think that I may have read that there's a scene with Carolyn Monroe fighting a giant crab, or it was planned. I don't know if it happened or not. So that'd be out of Mysterious Island. Okay, so what do you want to say about the film? Should we tell them what it's about? I mean, it's about Star Wars, basically. I mean, there are a lot of shot-for-shot references.
Well, interesting enough, starting out, you know, at the very beginning of this film, I mean, you see what is essentially like a starship. So this film actually opens with this ship coming through. Now, in essence, it really is like the opening of Star Wars, but it's a disappointment, you know, only maybe to like the nth degree, because I mean, when the Star Destroyer is actually crossing over and coming and just going after the blockade runner is actually been seen, that was amazing. I mean, it just leaves you flabbergasted when you're in the movie theater in Star Wars. I mean, that's the scene that seems to resonate with everybody that you talk to, that they remember the most, because it's just like endless, and it just really gives you the depth and the strength of what the Imperial forces are. With this, you're seeing the ship, and one of the interesting things that I do want to show, and to people that are joining us tonight, about the ship that they do show in the opening shot. When I saw this and I was essentially, you know, taking it in, I was like, wow, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Is this really happening? And this was what came up on the ship as it was passing by. And essentially, this ship looks like a model kit of a model kit of a model kit. But right here, all roads lead, I usually like to say all roads lead back to Star Trek. And so a lot of time, our viewers are always timing me to see how long it takes. But this is all roads lead back to Space 1999, folks, because right here is the Eagle nose cone from Space 1999, from the Eagle right there. It is literally a part of the ship. And then right here is the landing, is part of the pods that are the 4 pods that are on the side of the Eagle. And the only thing that's missing is the landing gear. So I just had to share that with our viewers, because I just thought that was really appropriate. I mean, in the opening shot, I'm watching this for the first time in like 40 some years. And literally the movie's on for like maybe not even 2 minutes. And then what do I see? I see something out of Space 1999 on the ship. And I was just like, all roads lead back to Space 1999.
Who knew there would be so much in this show about model building between the Aurora models and the Space 1999 model? Yeah. Hey,
I just want to give another quick shout out. Vince is actually putting up on the screen, folks. If if you're interested in Starcrash, it's on Blu-ray. You can order it through Amazon. Captain Phil, thank you for joining us. Captain Phil in the house, saw this in the theater, don't remember much, did enjoy meeting Carolyn Monroe at Chiller, who was very sweet. Yes, she was extremely nice, so I definitely agree with you, Phil, and thanks for joining us. But, so Ross, I have to ask you, as the movie started, and I realized, it had been some time since you saw it, what was your first impression of this? What resonates the most with you when you first, came to watch this film?
You mean rewatching it?
Yeah, rewatching.
Well, I mean, do we want to get in? All right. Well, we're going to talk about it eventually anyway. I mean, immediately, the music, which, as you can see, I'm in radio and I love film music. John Barry wrote the music for the score. He's a regular Bond composer. John Barry, who'd already won 3 Academy Awards at this point, 2 for Born Free for the original score and for the song, and 1 for The Lion and Winter. I think he'd go on to win like 5 Academy Awards. How did he get involved in Starcrash? So I'm thinking, well, okay, Carolyn Monroe was in the James Bond movie, but Marvin Hamlish was the composer for Spy Who Loved Me, so it wasn't that. Her husband, Carolyn Monroe's husband, is Judd Hamilton, who plays the robot L. He was in the music industry. His big hit was Baby Baby Fallen in Love. You remember that song?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that was like his big hit. And there are records. If you go on YouTube and Google John Hamilton, Carolyn Monroe, you'll get they recorded some things together. You'll be able to listen to them.
Oh, okay.
But his big hit was Baby Baby. So I'm thinking, well, maybe you knew John Barry. He played with a lot of musicians. No, I think it's just that John Barry, it was after Star Wars. This was going to be supposedly a series. And I don't think he saw the film when he signed on. I think he just heard that Christopher Plummer was in it. And I think that's how they got John Barry. And I think he probably, who knows, he may have rued the day a little bit that he had to write the music for Starcrash. But there's a beautiful theme in there. It seems like a lot of it's pretty hastily done. He doesn't like put his best work into it. But there's a lovely theme in there that you can still hear it when the film's over. It's in your head.
Right.
But, he went back to it, and eventually. He used that same theme with maybe just changed a note or two, and he used it in Out of Africa and won an Oscar for it.
That's amazing.
Which is funny because Nino Rota did the same thing with The Godfather. He wrote the theme for an Italian film called Fortunella. It was a comedy that was out maybe 10, 15 years before The Godfather. And somebody called him on it. He was nominated for the Academy Award, and they disqualified him because they said you can't use the same theme as the famous Godfather waltz, even though it's used a quite different effect in Fortunella. But they looked the other way with John Barry, or just nobody saw Starcrash is what it was. So give him another Oscar. Yeah. So, yep. There you go. So the music, and then of course the bad special effects, which are riveting all the same. In their way. You just can't look away because you don't have stars like in other movies where there's these white stars. They're like Christmas lights or something. You would see. You remember Light Bright?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a Light Bright. They put the they ran the ships through a light bright or something, and whenever you had a squadron of ships, they would all be kind of glued together, and they'd like run them by in a row. They would never be on different planes or anything. The thing about Starcrash, when you had Joe on talking about Joseph Metz talking about Star Wars, he had a lot of insightful comments about like when the X-wings would swing into the trench, there would be kind of that swaying, and it would lock in, and you'd feel that. A film like Star Trek or Starcrash, I beg your pardon. It's like when you listen to a piece of music. We have our masters. You've got your Beethovens and your Wagners and your Mahlers and everything, and then you've got the second rank and the third rank of composer. Who never reached that height. But the same with the movie makers. You learn something beyond those composers' own merits or those filmmakers' own merits as to just what did work so well in the good movies or in the good pieces of music, because you really see like, well, Star Wars could have been so bad,
It could have been.
Yeah,
it could have been, and that was something that we actually.
Crash.
That was something that we actually had discussed on previous episodes too. And this, Mary Beth and Mike and I, we were talking about it after we had talked, with Joe, and we were saying how the editing. It was George Lucas's wife that essentially had saved that movie, had saved Star Wars, because, if Star Wars in its original form where, would have been completed, I mean, it wasn't as good as the final, product. And I'm referring to episode 4, but it was her going back and editing separate different scenes and putting them together. I mean, as we all know, it can definitely make or break a movie, and it definitely made Star Wars the success that it was.
Right. Well, you see that final assault in Starcrash on the space station that we'll show later, at your convenience, the ones at the hand, and they have several shots where the ship is going, from the ship's point of view, where they're going over the surface, and it's, they really tried to do the Death Star,
Right. Exactly. It was trying to emulate that.
It was not working. But,
Diane. I just want to real quick. Diane is saying, "I'm going to admit I have never heard of this movie." Lots of laughs. It's okay, Diane. It's honestly, when it was out in the theaters, I actually, like I said earlier, I hadn't either, and it was just because of it actually being on Prism, this premium channel that my parents had. That I saw it and it was science fiction, and that's what actually brought me to it. Martin's indicating, he's saying that the special effects are on par with Battle Beyond the Stars. Yeah, there's another movie back.
Yeah.
And then Phil saying, Roy's comment about Marsha Lucas, I think was her name. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Phil. Yeah, that Marsha Lucas saved Star Wars.
Marsha Lucas, George Lucas's wife. Yeah, yeah. I think Battle Beyond the Stars may have had the effects may have been slightly better. I don't know, but you know what? This is totally off topic.
It's all right.
Everything else is too, right?
We're having fun again. I'm just really happy to have you on here. We're just talking about this fun. This is just like a fun bad movie. I mean, and it's no offense against the filmmakers or anything. It's just that unfortunately, there's a scale of something that really stands out that's incredible, and then there's something that we remember for the wrong reasons and we just kind of smile about. And this is that movie. Rob's saying no amount of editing would have saved Starcrash.
They could have edited the whole thing out. Well, the thing is, though, is going back to it as an adult now, I guess when I was watching it, I was probably, 11, 12 or something like that when they were showing it on HBO. I start seeing the other influences. So, when I saw it the first time, it's like, okay, Star Wars. When I get a little older, okay, Barbarella. But then you start to see some of COZZI's other influences in the movie. And he claims there are two different stories that he floated on this thing. One, he claimed that he had never seen Star Wars.
Right.
That he had the idea for this movie before Star Wars came out, which, okay, maybe he wanted
possible.
He might have wanted to do a space movie, but he
right.
did not. There's no way that the movie in its current form is what he envisioned before Star Wars.
No, there's too many similarities. And I think one of the things I read too was that maybe he never saw the movie Star Wars, but he may have read the book.
That was the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just so much better. Well, we're jumping all over the place, but there are other influences. That spaceship you showed with the Space 1999 details, which I did not pick up on. It was named for a science fiction writer. Did you notice that?
I did notice that.
So it was a little tribute to. And
actually, I'm going to bring that up on the screen while I can do that.
Oh, you have it. Okay.
Yeah. Let me just show our listeners, and bear with me one moment, and we will. I'm just learning. I'm attempting to master this as time goes on here, folks. So I appreciate your patience with me, and I do have that. Let's see. Well, maybe I don't, but anyway, you know what? It is live broadcasting, folks, and go ahead, Ross.
Well, it's Murray Leinster is the name of the ship, he was a science fiction writer
right.
of the golden age of science fiction. But the very first line of dialogue, I think, when you go inside of the ship, somebody's paging like was it a General Bradbury or?
Yes.
Yeah,
because I did catch that when I was watching that for the first time, since rewatching it, I should say, I caught that, and I went back to make sure I caught that correctly, and then I later read it's because he was the writer director was a huge Ray Bradbury fan, so that was kind of him giving a wink to him.
And then later on in the film, now Joe Spinell is in this film. We didn't show his picture yet.
No, we didn't.
Joe Spinell we know from he was in Rocky. He was, Gots of the Lone Shark, and he was in the Godfather movies.
Right.
He's part of the whole baptismal bloodbath at the end. He's one of the Corleone's soldiers who at the end who assassinates the guy in the revolving door at the end of there. And here he is in his getup for Starcrash. This movie, you can't really see it here, but this movie had fabulous capes. I could say that for it. And he gets to wear the cape, and he's got crazy mad scientist hair. He's always cackling. He's Count Zarth on. Right?
Yes, Count Zarth on.
Yeah, not to be confused with Darth. He's Zarth, not Darth.
Right.
And he, of course, wants to control the universe. He wants to be emperor of the universe.
Of course he did.
As opposed to what is he? He's the leader of the League of Dark Worlds or something, But
his performance, though, you know what? I have to say, it was good for what it was. I mean, he was totally over the top. He was playing the camera, and he was playing it, with so much fun that he was a good character for the movie.
I'm sure he had a blast because he always plays a villain, but it's usually a much more threatening villain. Like, later on, he made he's a serial killer. He's a maniac. He was in the last horror show with Carolyn Monroe, both of those movies, by the way. And I think Judd Hamilton produced one or both of those movies, Carolyn Monroe's husband. But Joe Spinell actually wrote the story for Maniac. So he played on he had a very menacing look. He didn't have the best complexion, and he could look kind of scary, and even under the best of circumstances.
He really,
So,
really carried it well. Hey
yeah.
Ross, I want to interject a comment Phil's putting. He said, "Well, being inspired by Star Wars itself is derivative of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. So wanting to make a movie inspired by space opera, not so unique post Star Wars. The difference being movies inspired by Star Wars post Star Wars actually got greenlit by the studio because they figured it would make money. I mean, they knew Roy would watch it." How right you are, Phil.
Yeah.
At least with the last comment.
Star Wars had a lot of influences, but of course he wanted to make Gordon originally. But yeah, Joe talked about some of those again. He talked about the Kurosawa influences and some of the there was John Ford in there. There was references to Yojimbo with Toshiro Mifune. There was all kinds of stuff in Star Wars, and Joe made a good point of drawing it to all of his film school influences. This movie, though, beyond Star Wars and Barbarella, we mentioned the Murray Leinster, we mentioned Ray Bradbury. Later on in the film, Spinell's henchman, his name is Elric. Now, how many times do you hear the name Elric? He's the hero or the anti-hero of the series of books by Michael Moorcock.
Oh,
so I think so I think he was dropping these science fiction things through there to kind of pepper it for the fans. And but beyond Star Wars, I think what he really wanted to make, he said, was Sinbad on Mars.
Yeah, I did read that. Yep.
So I think he wanted to go a little pulpier with it, and it was kind of the money people, the studios, that kind of pushed him to go into the Star Wars direction. So he salvaged as much as he could, and to that end, to that point, the Sinbad thing, he did incorporate some stop motion effects into the movie.
Right, almost as a tribute to Ray Harryhausen.
Right. But there weren't enough, unfortunately. It kind of reminded me of Jack the Giant Killer with Kerwin Matthews. I don't know if you ever saw that. It was after Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. Kerwin Matthews.
Heard of it, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, yes. It was one of those things where I think they wanted to get Harryhausen, but he couldn't do it. So they had a little stop motion in there, and the rest was just people with fuzzy masks trying to be stop motion, So, but we did get the giant on the Amazon planet. You have a photo of that, don't you?
I do. Let me bring that up. And yeah, that giant was somewhat menacing. And you got to remember too, this was 1977, 1978 when they were doing this. So actually, these kind of effects were kind of cool for that time. And let me see here.
While you're calling that up, I'll just say that the basic plot of the thing, if there is a plot, is Stella Starr, Carolyn Monroe, and Acton, who is Marjo Gortner. They're smugglers, in the Han Solo vein, although without the roguish charm. And they eventually get caught by the intergalactic police or whatever they are, and then they get kind of enlisted since they're the best pilots in the galaxy. We don't see any evidence of Carolyn Monroe being the best star pilot in the galaxy, but they keep saying, we need a pilot like you. So they go and then they help the Emperor of the Universe, who's played by Christopher Plummer, go and find his lost son, is what it is. Now, let me get this straight, because maybe I don't even understand it. At the beginning, the ship is under attack by these globules, these creatures from the id. It reminded me of Forbidden Planet or something. Everybody just starts collapsing with these globules all over them. And there are 3 escape pods that take off. And the first, they chase them down to these different planets. And as far as I can tell, everybody's dead except the 3rd pod. Was that David Hasselhoff? Is that what it was?
That was.
Okay.
That was, yes.
So he was on the planet of the troglodytes with his black eyeliner and creature of the Black Lagoon mask. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have. I thought I had it, but I don't have it.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's this giant. It's taken right out of Jason and the Argonauts. Anyway.
It is.
Talos with the sword. The sequence is the same, just not quite as fluid. You've got that. You had there are these 2 robots who are henchmen for Spinell, Zarn Arn, who they call them. I thought it was a nice touch that they called them golems. By golems, because usually they're droids or minions or something like that. But golem, of course, is they're the automatons from the Jewish legend about the clay man who's animated and can do your bidding. And so I thought that was kind of witty that they called the 2 robots eventually who are slain by Marjoe Gortner and then David Hasselhoff
with his lightsaber. I mean, his light sword.
Yeah, his laser sword.
Oh, you know what, Russ? Here we go. I'm gonna bring this up so everybody can see.
You got it. There it is. All right, Ray Harryhausen, eat your heart out. Yeah, that's on some Amazon planet. I don't know. They have Carolyn Monroe show up in her space bikini with the robot, and there is a girl fight. You know, there's an entire Amazon troop there, and she fights them. And but I deliberately didn't send an image of that. You can look that up. Oh, by the way, somebody said I never saw this movie. You know, YouTube like yanks these things off of, for copyright reasons. You put a movie up and it's gone off of YouTube. There's at least a half a dozen copies of a Starcrash on YouTube in various, varying qualities. So if you want to get an idea what this movie is after we're done talking, the whole thing is on there. Just find a copy that you can kind of see what's going on, though. Because
exactly. You can almost like piece it together by going on YouTube. And that's one of the great things about YouTube. There are so many old time science fiction shows, and there's also movies that you can actually, dig up. Sometimes, to what Ross's point was, due to copyright reasons, you can't, actually see the entire film sometimes. But then sometimes, if you watch it, you can separate it and you can, watch it and actually catch it.
You can see the whole Starcrash.
Exactly, the whole thing, the way it was meant to be.
Somebody uploaded it from videotape. Don't watch that one, but there's some others on there. And I'm not saying take the money away from the artists. So that, they want their you want to give them their royalties or whatever. If you like the movie, buy the movie on DVD or Blu-ray. But if you want to get an idea of what it is, it's out there.
Preview it, because you don't want to take away from the artist. We're not recommending that you do that, because it's like it's very important to do that. Absolutely. Yeah. Rob is saying Luigi Cozzi also directed 2 Hercules movies with Lou Ferrigno that are fun to watch. He rips off even more movies than in Starcrash.
Well, he did a Sinbad. He did do a Sinbad movie eventually with Lou Ferrigno. Yeah. There's like Sinbad and the Seven Seas. I've never seen it, but I've got to see this movie.
You know what? I think I actually remember that too, Ross and Rob. I think I remember that. I don't think I saw the entire thing, but you're definitely striking a familiar chord with that. Hey, I just want to give another shout out. Hey, Eva, thanks for joining us. And Ross, Joe Brickman is actually on, and he's saying hi, and he's saying it's been a long time. There's another name from the past that you may know.
There you go, Joe. Good to hear from you. Yep. I don't always have the beard, by the way. This is only for Corona. Yeah. I'm actually quite handsome. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, the other cast member that we mentioned. Okay, we had Joe Spinell. We talked about all the others. We didn't get to the other character actor, Robert Tessier.
Yes, and he was a familiar character actor. And he, we were talking about Buck Rogers before. He was actually in a Buck Rogers in 25th Century episode with Gil Gerard back in the day.
That's right. We had a photo of that. I don't know if you got it in there or not, but yes, he was a guest on. You would recognize, if you saw his face, you would know who he was. In fact, we have one with Carolyn Monroe. If you got that one. Yeah,
I'll bring that up. That way our viewers can see that, and you can get an idea of who he actually was. And,
he's a familiar face. He was in The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds. He was in Hard Times with James Coburn and Charles Bronson. And
yes.
And he was in The Deep with Robert Shaw.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's got the shaved head. He's got very distinctive features. He's of Algonquin descent. He was a decorated war hero. He was a paratrooper during the Korean War. But he got all these parts as bikers, as threatening toughs. But they paint him green in this movie.
Of all things, right?
Yeah. Can you find that photo or not?
Yeah, I'm actually bringing it up right now. And actually, the photo of him he's with Stella Star right now.
There you go. Now, I don't know if he says his name Robert Tessier or Tessier, the French, and after the French, but I'm going to assume it's Tessier. But when you look at this, you think, you know what? They could have made a really low-rent version of Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's true.
If they would have made like a bad 1970s version of Guardians of the Galaxy, I would have loved it. No CGI. It would have been great. No. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, for as bad as this movie is, it's still better than 6 of the Star Wars movies.
Oh, boy.
Who said that? All right. So you have Robert Tessier. He plays a police.
Cricket.
I don't know who said it, but okay. And there's the major cast member, of course, is Christopher Plummer.
Yes, and I don't have a photo of him now. Christopher Plummer is, I mean, he's a well-respected, well-known actor. I mean, he was a Shakespearean actor, the same caliber, well, he acted with William Shatner. In fact, William Shatner, I even remember reading. This is where, folks, all roads do lead back to Star Trek. They were doing a play, and then what happened was William Shatner was understudying for Christopher Plummer in Canada because they had worked together there, and Christopher Plummer had actually, taken ill, and then William Shatner had been understudying for him. And forgive me, I do forget the role, what it was. And, it helped put William Shatner on the map. I mean,
Yep. Henry V. Yeah.
Yeah, Henry V.
Christopher Plummer, he was understudy for Christopher Plummer. He played Gloucester in the play, which is a very small role, Henry's brother. And Plummer came down with, he had kidney stone.
Oh, well, Ross, I just went through that about maybe 3 weeks ago, and
sorry. Okay, well, this is science fiction. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Christopher Plummer had to bail out, and suddenly Shatner was on.
Yep.
And he said, "Did you see Shatner's one-person show that he did?
Yes.
Shatner's World. He
Yeah,
tells the story. Yeah." He tells the story in there. Yeah, so he's going and he's getting all the, he does the big speeches, the Band of Brothers speech and the Agincourt, and he gets through it like there's no problem, and he gets to the end, when he's bantering with Catherine at the end, and he just blanks on his lines. And supposedly one of the cast members there had a photographic memory, and he knew all the lines in the play, but he didn't know the line either. But Shatner somehow snapped back. This is his story, and completed it. And but he did get very good reviews. The audience loved him. So this is about 10 years before Star Trek. So
yeah, it was like in the 1950s, and the rest was history from that. But getting back to Christopher Plummer, though, well respected actor, you have to wonder, how did they get Christopher Plummer for this? And essentially, from what I read, and I'm sure what you heard too, is that the filming was only 3 days, but they offered him, it was being filmed in Rome, in Italy rather, and he got to get a free trip out of it, plus be paid like $10,000 a day, which at the time was a lot of money, for just doing that short amount of filming. So it was a win-win for Christopher Plummer to be in this movie.
I'd take $10,000 a day even now.
Even 40 exactly.
Years later. Even 40 years later. Yeah. So yeah, that's what it was. I was wondering, like, how did he get? Did they have photographs? Did they have nude photographs of Christopher Plummer? How did they get him to do this? But yeah, he said he'd do anything to go to Rome for a free trip to Rome, and it's great because he delivers his lines. He's the only one in the movie who can act, and he just has this seraphic look on his face. He's like blissed out the whole time with a very slender smile on his face. And these droopy eyes.
Delivery.
Yeah, smooth. And it is like he's doing Shakespeare. He's like he's doing Henry. And even the epilogue at the end of the movie, when he's like, yes, so we've come out on top. No doubt one day we'll be called again. The wheel will turn. But for now, let us be happy. Or let us be, and the way he delivers it, it was like it's some epilogue from a Shakespeare play, He was just terrific in the movie. But really emphasizes the poor acting ability of some of the other people in the cast.
And as much as I like Carolyn Monroe, I mean, I do enjoy watching her and her performance. And I loved her in James Bond. I mean, she's just an all around nice person. I loved her in the Sinbad movie. It's just that when she's in different situations, perilous situations, and maybe this has to do with the fact that she was dubbed. It's just that you can act in a scene, and this is, with really great actors. I mean, you can do the exchange and you're not saying any dialogue. And that really conveys of an actor that's really just, top notch, where it's all, facial and body language, but she's in peril, she's in danger. And it's just like, it almost seems like it's a joke, especially at the beginning of the movie, but it is supposed to be fun and everything. But it's just that I really would like to watch the European version of this film, and just to see, to hear it with her voice where it's not dubbed, just to see how the difference in the way it comes across, because I really think that it's tough on an actor or an actress, when they get dubbed by someone else. And we had actually talked about this on Sci-Fi Distilled with Mary Beth and Mike, where, you know, with Flash Gordon, I mean, there's an example of what happened with that. I mean, Sam J. Jones, you know, was under, you know, Dino De Laurentiis's film. They went through it and everything. There were some problems that took place, and they took a break at Christmas time, and it was in 70, I guess it was being filmed in 79, and it was time to come back in 1980, and they were going to do, you know, post-production and everything, and they didn't invite him back because there was things that were going on, and the entire movie was dubbed without him. And it's, you know, it takes away from the performance. Now they try to match it up as best that they could, and they really tried to. I think the movie was successful. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that movie. I love that movie. But as an actor, it's you know, you're on the screen, you know, actors, I mean, I do community theater. I do you know, I do murder mysteries, and, you know, I've done, you know, these things. You know, actors are looking for recognition, and it's interesting too, because people will say, you know, if you think about it, as an actor, you're looking for recognition from total strangers, people that you don't know. And, you know, it's kind of interesting in that. So it is on a certain level, it is an ego thing. And to think about being dubbed by another performer and losing your voice, you know, for that's got to be pretty harsh, especially for something that is, you know, international and is in theaters in different countries. And case in point with this movie where this happened with her. So
yeah, I wonder if there is a version in existence though with her voice, since they dubbed everything. I don't know if it's possible that when they filmed it, they may have just, you know, done it with sound. But I mean, since they're going to overdub it anyway, I don't know if they did or not.
Right.
You know, because they dubbed even the American actors in, well, they're all, a lot of them are American in this one, but with the spaghetti westerns, when they did the Clint Eastwood movies, and you know, they dubbed Lee Van Cleef would go back and dub his own voice, or Eli Wallach or what have you. So there may not be but there could be a copy somewhere with her voice on it. I don't know if it was ever released into theaters though. Yeah. So, but yeah, I understand, because some of the overdubbing for, you know, nothing against Candy Clark, but it didn't help the performance of Carolyn Monroe. Yeah.
No, unfortunately,
it sounded like
didn't.
Somebody reading. Yeah.
It really did. I mean, it took away that aspect of her character. So it would be very interesting to see if a copy of that is available. I know Vince put something up as far as that, but, you know, I think that is the Blu-ray version, and that's the US version. And it probably doesn't. And interesting too, with the US version, the director's name is even changed to an American name. It's not
oh yeah,
COZZI.
Yeah, it's what is it, Louis Coates?
Yeah, they altered his name for that. So
yeah. Because we wouldn't go to a movie with an Italian director, would we? It has to be Louis Coates.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. But I have to say, Roy, one of the things I like about your show is watching your cat run up and down the steps. This is one of my favorite parts of your show. It reminds me of Uncle Teddy and Arsenic and Old Lace. He's always running up San Juan Hill there. What's the name of your cat?
Squeaker.
Squeaker is always squeaking up and down the steps. I love it.
we have Squeaker and we have Marblehead, and usually Squeaker is the one that's always making the appearance.
Okay. All right. Well, you mentioned
scared cat.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, he's a scaredy cat.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
but he's not camera shy, obviously.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Flash Gordon, and I thought there was a lot in common with Flash Gordon in this movie. Not just the motion picture, but the serials with Buster Crabbe. And if you look at it in that light, it's not really as bad as it is. I mean, it's still bad. Let's face it. But those Buster Crabbe serials, they still hold up. I watched he did 3 sets of Flash Gordon serials back in the day, back in the 30s. And I watched the first one a couple of months ago, and yeah, it's cheesy, and they're just making them up as they go, and they're all kinds of crazy cliffhangers, but they're so much fun. You know, I love them. So, I mean, if you look at it like that, I mean, a lot of the helmets that these guys are wearing in Starcrash, it's just a complete throwback to the pulp, the age of pulp. Everybody's got the fins on their helmets, and everything's deco looking, and
you know, it's interesting too, Ross, you're saying that, because this is almost like a lower budget Flash Gordon type of movie.
Yeah.
Because it was attempting a certain type of, I mean, he was trying to give a tribute to Ray Harryhausen. He was trying to do a sci-fi adventure, but it just wasn't hitting the mark, but it wasn't even hitting the mark on like a B type film. It was just like a step below that.
Right.
But it's so ridiculous on so many levels. It makes it that much more memorable and that much more fun to look at. But it doesn't, in my opinion, I mean, I love Flash Gordon. I remember seeing that movie at you remember the Eric movie theater in downtown Easton.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I saw that one at the 25th Street though, shopping.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But,
and the Budco.
Is that what it's called? The Budco, right?
It's called the Budco.
Right. I think I saw it at the Budco, but yeah.
But at the Eric, I remember seeing this movie, and I saw it with Joe. I saw it, I think, with Joe Brickman and some other people. Leslie Frick. Leslie joins us sometimes, and it was like 3 weekends or 4 weekends consecutively in a row, because it was just such a fun movie, and it was bad on certain levels. To me, this movie is fun, but it didn't reach that type of hype or that level of fun of badness, as it did like something like Flash Gordon, which, we're making the comparisons here.
Well, you need Brian Blessed. That's the thing. You can't do it without Brian Blessed. It's not going to work. I mean, Joe Spinell, okay, but he's kind of like a few steps down from because I think Brian Blessed, even on his most mellow day, is probably so far over the top.
Yeah. Oh, without question. In fact,
Bolton.
Bolton. Yeah, and he was in 2 Space 1999 episodes. He was
really?
Cabot Rolland in the first season. He played a doctor, and then he was also Maya's dad in the second season opener of Space 1999, The Metamorph. So he was, all roads lead back to Space 1999 on this show tonight. So it's just, Brian Blessed is bigger than life, and when it comes to doing things. And Suzanne, who I had on a couple weeks ago, Suzanne Heimer Peterson, she was actually Melody Anderson's stand-in for Flash Gordon. So, and she, which was kind of cool.
Wow.
But this also, a lot of the scenes in this movie too, it seemed very abrupt. It's like and I know that there was a lot of editing that took place because, we were saying, about Roger Corman was trying to make it a little bit more adaptable as far as a film for, the American audiences. But it's just that it was like a quick cut. And it just really felt like things were pieced together, and you're just taking, different scenes that were essentially made at different times, and you're integrating them to make a quote unquote movie. And it just came up short because of that. So again, it just fun movie. We're here talking about it 42 years later, but not super memorable. Well, on certain levels anyway.
On certain level. Hey, did you know that Joe Dante edited the trailer for the movie?
No, I did not.
Yeah, it was before he did right before he did Piranha. Yeah, so it was right before he took off and did The Howling and of course Gremlins later.
Yep.
Some other.
Oh, that's interesting. So it was really before his career really started to soar.
Yeah. But just the trailer. He didn't have anything to do with the movie.
Gotcha. Rob Barnes is saying Monroe went through the whole movie with a vacant look on her face, kind of like Harrison Ford in Return of the Jedi.
I have to say, you know what? Harrison Ford. When I was doing this, I was thinking, I'm going to go for the Ray Walston Popeye look, And I said, I think I overshot that. It's more like, I wonder if it's like the Harrison Ford Call of the Wild. Has anybody seen that movie? I hear they CGI'd the dog. I
heard that too. Yeah, I did not see
that. Anyway, there's one scene in Starcrash where Carolyn Monroe, they're out on this ice planet. Yep. And this movie is full of ludicrous dialogue. Oh, Christopher Plummer is one of the best lines, though. We'll have to do that. But they're out on this ice planet, and they say that we gotta find shelter because the temperature drops thousands of degrees at night.
Yeah.
What planet has a temperature that drops thousands of degrees? But anyway, she becomes frozen, but there's a scene where they take her back on the ship and they thaw her out.
Right.
And they do the old, the Loncini Wolfman thing where it's just like they take a shot of her with some, fake ice on her, and then they stop the camera and take a little more off, or probably do it in reverse and have her start out fresh and put the ice on her. But at the end, she's got the perfect makeup, and the eyeshadow and everything like that. And it would have been totally ludicrous. Except John Barry's music is really beautiful in that scene. It's like a moment of poetry in the middle of Starcrash. I'm like, wow, how did he do that with just the music? It was such a stupid scene.
And that's a great point too. And about John Barry, I even remember hearing, or they were concerned that they didn't even want him to see this movie because they would be like, what the heck did I get in? He'd be thinking, what the heck did I get into by actually being a part of this? Yeah. Listening to some of the scores in this film, though, I can't remember exactly which specific scene, I did pick up a taint or faint twinge of James Bond, though.
Yes.
It was very similar. There's a certain piece as the music is taking place where I heard Bond. And I mean, you have a composer as brilliant as John Barry in a movie like this. I mean, it's not all that bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's right from the middle of his Bond era, or I mean, he'd already done so many of the Bond films, and then but the motif they used for the troglodytes was a little bit like the 2001, a little bit like the Richard Strauss, dun dun, every time the caveman would jump in.
Exactly.
There was some lazy scoring in it, but the Bond parts and the part I talked about that has like a little bit of a sweeping, almost love theme, were both gorgeous. How bad was Starcrash? It was so bad that Ennio Morricone turned it down. He didn't want to do the music. And Ennio Morricone never turns anything down. Maybe he was scoring Orca at that time or something. I don't know. But it didn't seem like Morricone would ever say no. The guy who wrote 500 film scores and dozens of film scores a year.
And he said no to this movie.
He said no to Starcrash. So
wow. I'm just curious out there. Any more comments? I've seen a lot, a few comments coming through recently. Any more comments or anything that anybody notices in regards to, or anything you remember distinctly about this film that you'd like to talk about? Because we're going to start to wrap things up in the next couple minutes, but just want to check to say. Oh, John Haig saying, as much as I love John Barry, a lot of his music is the same. Kong you hear in Ray's Titanic, which you'll hear in Dancing with Wolves. Oh, interesting.
Kind of true. He wasn't really an action composer either. He's more of a romantic. He did a lot with strings and he put a horn in there, and it was beautiful stuff. But but you know what? He did The Black Hole shortly after this.
Another. You know what, Ross? I forgot about that, and that came out in 1979.
Yeah, which was a much better score and a better movie. Maybe not the best movie, but that's another movie I wouldn't mind watching again. If you ever want to do that one.
Yeah, well, we definitely will be covering it. 1979. I mean, that literally was the next year. Well, this film came out originally when I was talking about this. I was saying this film came out in 79. Came out like the last week of 78. So it was like the 78, 79 release for this film when it was in the US. So it's interesting to think that The Black Hole came out that same year.
Yeah, we were spoiled for choice with these Star Wars knockoffs, the post Star Wars science fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a lot of really bad movies. Saw some good ones though too. And you're 12 years old. You just want some more robots and some more lightsabers and
exactly.
Laser cannons.
Again, Star Wars opened the doors, and it opened the doors for a lot of good things and not so good things, but it definitely kept science fiction fresh and vibrant. It somebody had commented it would be interesting if there was an alternate universe, and if George Lucas and Marcia Lucas hadn't gotten divorced, what would have actually happened? What would have become of the remaining movies? We'll never know, but it is kind of interesting to think about. But and the other thing, you could take it a step back or even a step further, is if Star Wars never occurred, how would science fiction be today? It's kind of like one of those sliding door moments, another movie reference. If you went back in time and let's say he, for some reason, had gotten the rights of Flash Gordon and he made, did Flash Gordon instead of Star Wars, things would have been totally different as far as science fiction is known today. Maybe it would be a lot better, but somehow I don't think so. I wonder how. I bet you the course of history, cinema in general, would have changed, because it wouldn't have had the immense returns on the blockbusters, on these summer tentpole movies. It used to be we had summer movies, and now they're basically year round, and every one of them has to generate so many millions and billions of dollars. And if they didn't have movies doing that, we might still have things in between, like Dog Day Afternoon or or The Godfather or French Connection or whatever other movies they were making that were not they made money, and the studios would say, wow, this is a big hit, until Star Wars came out. They said, oh, what are we doing with these other movies? Why are we not Right. And that's true. It took away Dog Day Afternoon. I think, I'm guessing 75 with that. And you said The French Connection. I think that was 71, 72. And that's when Gene Hackman won an Academy Award for his portrayal in that movie, right?
Yeah. A lot of good movies in the 70s. Really ugly decade, but some good movies.
Yeah.
Some bad movies too. But even the bad ones are fun.
No, absolutely. Phil's saying if you subtract Star Wars, then Star Trek Phase 2, the series in the 1970s, would have went into production without Leonard Nimoy as Spock, instead was on. Very true, Phil. Star Trek Phase 2 was was set and ready to go. And, a lot of times you can go online and you can see the early the uniforms that they were going to use, which were very almost identical to what was being used in the original series. And then with Star Wars became Star Trek the motion picture. They abandoned it, and they were able to get Leonard Nimoy back. Leonard Nimoy was not going to be a part of that film. They were not going to use him. He's also saying too, this is coming from Phil, but you'd still have the Spielberg effect with CE3K. Yeah, 1977 movie that came out and was a huge blockbuster.
Right. Totally different movie though, and a totally different. That should have been it was a one-off, except for the special edition. But
right.
What I like about that, and this is a digression, of course, is that all of the versions were made available. I don't like it when somebody does a director's cut and you can't get the original anymore.
No, but, I agree with that.
Yeah, and George Lucas is not the only one that's guilty of that. Just the most egregious.
I really think that what's going to happen is when it's 2027 and it's the 50th anniversary, my gut is telling me that these things that are supposedly not available are going to become available, and they'll probably be re-released, whether it be on Blu-ray or some form of downloading or streaming service. Maybe it'll probably be on some kind of streaming service where you can't actually purchase it, but you'll be able to watch it maybe once or twice or how many times, but you won't be able to keep a physical copy of it. And then that way you'll be able to see it. And again, it'll be a way for them to make, a lot of money from it, because the fans are going to want to see it. And it'll be a way of celebrating the 50th anniversary. That's just my gut. I keep saying that. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I found it interesting in reading about The Empire Strikes Back on the 40th anniversary that the copy that was selected for preservation by the Library of Congress was actually taken from the original cut that was submitted for their archive. I guess Lucasfilm said, well, here we have the special editions, and back in the late 90s, and they said, no, it's okay, we already have the original here. So the originals are around, as we know, but
just not available
that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
don't get me started on this. Yeah.
That's conversation for another day. Yeah. But I guess we'll start to wind down though. But I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And, we were taking a look back on this 1978-79 film. It was definitely, Starcrash is definitely a fun movie. It's a nostalgic movie. I really, personally, definitely making fun of it and, poking a little fun here and there. It wasn't the greatest, script wide. But as far as enjoyment and, having it be a fun movie to reflect back on, absolutely. I mean, it's a nostalgic moment.
What was your favorite moment from the film? Do you have a favorite?
My favorite moment from the film? That's a really good question. Probably when I saw the eagle nose cone on that ship.
Well, there was a reference also to Invaders from Mars from the 1950s movie. Yep. They had like a little tentacled head in a dome. It was the judge that was passing down the sentence on Stella and Acton. I said, this is so familiar. What is this? And I'm watching it. And then I realized it's from the 1953 film Invaders from Mars, with the Martian intelligence in the dome with the things coming up around the side of the head like that. So that was kind of a fun reference for geeks.
I remember seeing that on the cover of Star. I think it was. I don't know if it was on a cover of Starlog magazine or if it was featured, but and you actually, to be fair, you sent me that photo too, Ross, and I didn't have the opportunity to put that up. But you're absolutely right. That was a refining moment, though.
Maybe it was in Forrest Ackerman's magazine or something.
Yeah.
Did you ever get that? Did you get Famous Monsters or?
I remember that magazine, but I didn't. It was not something I purchased regularly. Starlog was my go-to magazine.
Yeah. Read all.
I started. In fact, we were talking about CE3K. I started with Starlog number 12, where the mothership is actually on the cover of the magazine. Joe Metz, he actually had issues 2. He started with 2 with Martin Landau and Barbara Bain on the cover, and then he up until like Star Wars, and then that's when I saw those. I got hooked, and
yeah. My favorite moment from the movie.
Yeah, what was your favorite movie?
Christopher Plummer. There's the planet. There's a big trap, and Joe Spinell has got the he's going to blow up the planet. He lures the emperor to the scene because his son is there, played by David Hasselhoff, and he manages to lure him to the planet. And he's, oh, there's going to be an explosion in 30 seconds or something. What do we do? And Christopher Plummer like meets all of their eyes, and he goes, well, I wouldn't be emperor of the universe if I didn't have a few tricks up my sleeve.
Yes.
And then he delivers the immortal line, Imperial battleship, halt the flow of time. And then there's the green ray that hits
3 minutes.
the planet and stops everything for only 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Right. Yeah, 3 minutes it takes them to get off the planet. And they give some explanation about how every molecule on the planet will be frozen for 3 minutes.
Yep.
But of course, then they get on the elevator and go down the elevator. So I don't know how that happened, but that's my favorite moment.
And that is a great moment. And again, Christopher Plummer is just like so,
Yeah, he's not on the
just
same.
like a king. He says it like an emperor, the emperor of the, the emperor of the universe.
I think he did it for the cape. Yeah, and the $10,000 a day.
Well, before we leave, I just want to say thanks, Andrew, for joining us. Yes, Starlog number 15. You're absolutely right, Andrew. Thanks for sharing that. I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This was really fun, and just want to give a few shout outs. First one is to Sci-Fi Distilled, which is on Wednesday nights, and it's with Mike and Mary Beth. They are the hosts, and they talk 80s and 90s and beyond, and they will actually be on this Wednesday, and they will be talking about Blade Runner with Dave Laurello. I always pronounce Dave's name incorrectly, so forgive me, David. Sorry about that. But anyway, they're going to be talking about Blade Runner, so definitely check them out. It's going to be an interesting discussion. That's a really fascinating movie, and that's from 1982, I believe, and starring Harrison Ford. So that will be Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Sci-Fi Distilled, and they will be talking about Blade Runner. Also, I want to give out a shout out to the Country Gate Theater, a theater that's very close to my heart. And just folks, check out their website. They're going to be having stuff posted down the road. Everything going on with COVID and everything is kind of hurt theaters around the country. And of course, community theaters are not exempt from this. So please check them out, www.countrygate.org. They will have information posted about things that are going to be coming down the pike online. So please just keep on a lookout for that. And Ross, please let our viewers know where they can actually see you as well.
Well, I don't know if you can see me, but
Well,
I've been on WWFM, the Classical Network, is the radio station where I work, and I've been on there. It'll be 25 years in September. We're kind of on lockdown still from the COVID, so I'm doing everything recorded. I'm not doing my live air shifts, but I have 2 syndicated shows that I do there, and one of them is devoted to film music. So that might be of interest to some of your followers, especially science fiction and fantasy fans. This Friday at 6 p.m., I'm doing a show on wizards and sorcerers. So there'll be music from, of course, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, but also Dragon Slayer by Alex North. You remember that movie from 1981 or something with Ralph Richardson, and it was a pretty good score. And a movie called The Sword and the Sorcerer. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
With Talon with his 3-bladed, good music. Yep. David Whitaker, who did music for the Hammer films, some of the Hammer films, and it's a surprisingly rousing score, very good score in the post John Williams vein. So that'll be next Friday at 6 o'clock. You can hear it at WWFM.org. The show is called Picture Perfect. And I do another syndicated show that airs tonight, actually, at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, called The Lost Chord. And that's also at WWFM.org. That's devoted to neglected repertoire, unusual and neglected repertoire. And tonight, the show is called Roses of Persia. It's all Persian polyphonic music. So it's all music by Persian or Iranian composers written for symphony, orchestra, or Western instruments. So there you go, WWFM.org. That's my shtick. And then when we're back from COVID, I'm on the afternoon drive time. So
cool. Thanks for letting everybody know about that too, Ross.
Well, thanks for letting me.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely want to get the the information out there.
And you can visit my Facebook page at Classic Ross Amico. Classic Ross Amico. You can find out what I'm up to, and I always write about music every day. So there's always something on there. Yeah.
And I should add too that you are cousins with Joe Metz.
I am. Joe Metz, who was on doing Star Wars.
Star Wars, your first cousins. Yeah.
Very articulate and brilliant man. He is. What can I say? Yeah, we have a history.
No, which is really, really cool. And again, I want to thank you for being on. One other thing I want to say too is Nick Tate next Sunday, June 14th, mark your calendar. He will be joining us, and he will be on, the show is usually on, again, Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. That's a new name. And we will be on Friday, this coming Friday, which will be June 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Sundays, we are usually on at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. However, with Nick being on, we are going to be on 3 hours earlier. So mark your calendars. Again, June 14th, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're doing this just to try to accommodate everybody with different time zones, especially our European fans that are watching the show. And it'll be a little bit earlier. So we're having Nick back on, and it'll be for part 2. He's going to be my co-host and special guest. So I'm very much looking forward to having him on. So please join us for that. And by this Tuesday, I will be announcing what television show or movie we will be talking about this upcoming Friday, which will be June 12th. So stay tuned for that. Ross, again, this was great. This was very nostalgic. This was the fact that it's been so long that since we've actually seen each other is crazy. But I'm very happy that we were able to reunite, and especially with this type of venue, with dealing with sci-fi and stuff that we love. And I definitely would like to have you back on in the future, and we'll talk more sci-fi.
Thanks, Roy. It's been great. You know, I can't believe 35 years has passed. You know, when you called me, it's just like no time has passed. So it's good to see you again.
Oh, you too. So everybody, stay safe. I know it's, again, not to reiterate, but it's a really tough time out there. Just watch yourselves, be safe, you know, respect each other. I mean, we are, you know, one people, no matter of, you know, who we are, whatever our ethnicity, you know, what country we are from, you know, we are all together, and just, you know, try to remember that. And let's just try to support each other through this times, and keep the social distancing up as necessary, as needed. And then hopefully we will get through this pandemic and everything else that we are dealing with sooner than later. So for now, live long and prosper, and be safe, and take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, Roy.